Wow. That's a scary insight.
So again, like you say, is it fact, is it fiction, is it analogy? But even if you half that number and question, is it that some people had more than one mobile and they've reduced their number of SIM cards? Is it companies that have, made changes? There's lots of questions that could come to that, but 21 million is a lot of people to lose. And if you half that and say, is that half due to figures that have not been reported with regards to COVID-19? It's a very scary consideration.
Indeed. Julian, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Glad to hear it. Where are you calling in from?
I'm in Dubai, yeah, in the Springs.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing the book. I got the copy.
Have you read through it yet?
Yeah, I've actually been through it. I've been through it once quickly, and then I've gone back and kind of deep dive every chapter. So yeah, it's quite it's very interesting to really make you think about what are the problems or what are the challenges that your customers are facing, but then what are the opportunities for them as well. So not just trying to solve the negatives, but trying to think more positively about what they want and how you can support them to get them. So that's really interesting. But the hard thing for me is that I've got quite a which is mentioned in the book, but I've got quite a complex business for all these different products and customers. And then it's to try and think about, well, what is it, a central message, or is it all these different messages for different parts of the business?
It's difficult, and the vast majority of companies I come across and work with in the end, not all, I mean, some are simple, but a lot of them struggle with complexity. And then how do you break down that into a message that resonates? And there's often a lot of debate and discussion and back and forth. But there's usually, I mean, when you really break it down, there's usually and then usually the starting question is, where do you make your money, actually? So actually, whenever I work with a customer, rather than starting with marketing, I always start with, well, what is your business model, and what's driving revenue for you? Or where should you be making money that you're not because people don't know about you? And if you can draw a line between that and then start to prioritize your marketing and then segment it, that's how you then get to, you don't need to completely simplify it up to one just overarching message. It's great if you can get there, but you could then maybe chunk it down into 3 key kind of areas that you might focus on. So the book that talks about absolute clarity, and it's really starting at your at business level. Here's my message, but you almost want to think about it like almost like a family tree of messages that kind of all incorporate up into that main one. And you can start to brand script anything. It could be geography, it could be a specific type of customer, it could be a job title that you focus on, a number of things. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Okay, so there's 3 of us, including me, although there was about 20 people that registered, but hey, these things happen. Oh, we've got another one. Hi, Julia.
I do like the way that, Matt, that you do it at 11:28, not 11:30, not 11:15. It matches with my very sick sense of humor to being attention to details.
It's funny. People will often ask. They'll say, "So why do you do it at 12:28?" Well, you remembered the time, right? People tend to remember when you start meetings or anything you might be doing, an event, when you start it at a random time, I find people tend to remember more. Although that seems to be I'm not proving that point right now, am I? Because they're either forgotten entirely or they've just, it happens.
No, but it's attention to the small details that make the difference at the end of the day.
This is very true. This is very true. Very true indeed. So I'll maybe give it a couple more minutes for people to tune in, but I appreciate you guys all turning up on time, so I don't want to keep you guys hanging around. But it should mean it's still valuable. Anyway, so Yulia, are you with us? Are you connected okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Where are you calling in from, Yulia? Are you in Dubai?
Yeah, I live in Dubai and I work for a software development company called Agitate. It's a French software development company. We do mobile apps and websites, quite a lot of e-commerce. So I have a lot of customers from restaurants and hospitality field and retail as well. And as we are building quite often the e-commerce website, of course, some customers, they want to know our advices about how to do the marketing, what are the best practices and so on. So John White, he tagged me on the post.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so you're working with Intelligent Foods, are you?
Well, we just, so I switched on my camera. Hi. So we signed the contract with them yesterday. We are going to start and we are going to have a kickoff meeting this Sunday.
Good stuff.
Yep. So he tagged me on the post, so it might be something very important for him. So I want to see.
Well, hopefully we can share something with you new and you'll learn something new today. So I'm going to get cracking, guys. Welcome, Andrew. Feel free to unmute. There's not a massive group of us. Probably just.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Okay, so welcome, guys. We'll crack on. If anyone turns up, then they turn up. But otherwise, feel free to jump in with any questions as we go through. Anything whatsoever, just interrupt me, speak up, and we can go from there. Oh, my clicker's not working. So, this is what I think it often looks like when we as salespeople or as business owners are presenting, right? So I think we often end up, we've got a lot to say, we've got a lot to communicate to our customers, but what often ends up happening is we lose their attention. They get distracted and it's sometimes hard to keep their attention towards the end, and that's with any kind of sales presentation, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through what is a narrative-based, a story-based plan for building a sales presentation, a sales pitch or a sales keynote, so that you can connect with your customers. And these are really the 7 steps. We're going to dig into them, but in essence, those who've connected with me before and know that I'm obviously I base what I do on the power of story. It's all about beginning with the problem, agitating the problem further, giving them a way out and a plan, and only then do you introduce authority, which is all about you and your business. Paint a picture of success, but then end with the problem, and I'll explain why as we go through. As usual, I'll give away books afterwards. Julian's got one of those, Brad's got one coming to them, so it's not massive, not like there's masses of people here, but it looks like Yulia, you're going to get yourself a book as well. So anyway, here's the thing, right? Human beings, in essence, and Brad, you will have seen this, and if you've read the book, Julian, you'll know this from Building a Story Brand. So human beings, our brains are designed to do 2 things, primarily, above everything else. The first thing our brains are designed to do is survive and thrive. So as we go about our day, all the information we see in front of us, and if somebody is sat in a sales presentation, they are looking at you, and ultimately their brain is saying, is this going to help me survive and thrive? Is this going to help me finish a project, get ahead at work, get a promotion? Is it somehow going to help me move ahead in the world, move forwards? That's how our brains process the information in front of us. And at the same time, what our brains are doing is conserving calories. So our brain is about 2% of your body weight, burns about 25% of your daily calorie consumption. And it does that processing information. So if the information we present to people in a sales pitch doesn't resonate with them, doesn't connect with them as a stakeholder and help them survive and thrive, their instinct is to tune out, get distracted by their phone, get distracted by something else, think about their next meeting. And if you're presenting to 4 or 5 stakeholders in a room, you can see it happen, because they might have different perspectives, different motivations, different things that are important to them about whatever it is that you do. So it's important that we connect. I'm a big fan of the bowling ball analogy. So each ID you give someone, I want you to think about that idea in a sales pitch like it's an 8-pound bowling ball. In fact, an 8-pound bowling ball with grease on it. You give someone one idea, they can hold on to that. You give them a second idea, too many things you're trying to convey to them. Yeah, they might be able to hold on to that. But if you give them 3, they're going to drop the lot. They're going to drop the lot, and they're not going to necessarily remember anything you've told them because you've tried to put too much information in their minds. And that's where human beings they tend to just shut out, and they miss the point, and then they hear what they want to hear. And really, when we're in a sales scenario, you might have an hour, you might have 30 minutes. When you create that level of confusion, human beings don't like confusion. You end up losing, you don't get the result you want. So the good news is, story is a sense-making device. So human beings for centuries have used story to compel others, to bring groups of people together. In fact, anything and everything around us is built because people use words to convey a message. And nothing compels the human brain like a story. So if you think about it, when you go to the movies, you go into the movies and you're hooked for 2 or 3 hours. And that's not by accident. That's because script writers know that if they use a tried and tested formula, they will suck you into that movie and you'll stay hooked to the end. You'll leave your phone alone and it's like a roller coaster ride throughout that movie. And in essence, every movie that you watch follows this broad narrative arc. It's actually more complex when script writers do it, but in essence, every movie starts with a character who wants something. Something gets in the way of them getting what they want. They encounter a problem. They then meet a guide who gives them a plan, calls them to action, and that results in success or failure. And what happens throughout that movie is we're constantly torn between success and failure. Will they find love? Will they beat the bad guys or whatever it might be? Something good happens, something bad happens. And that's what keeps you torn. And it's that same tension that we want to create in a sales presentation when we're presenting to an hour. And for us, it's about playing the guide to the customer who's the hero and showing them that we can resolve their frustration. But what you don't want to do is bore them to death or shut them down early on or give them the solution too early, because you need to build that tension and then position yourself as a resolution to that tension. So usually I would spend a lot more time going into the story brand messaging filter box. So I won't do that right now, but as we move on, I'm going to go through and talk to you about how we use that framework to capture people's attention in a sales pitch. All right, anybody recognize this famous scene from a movie? What is it?
He has a set of skills, that's for sure.
Right, so this is Liam Neeson. It's from the movie Taken, and this is, in essence, he obviously finds out his daughter's being kidnapped by human traffickers. Terrible, terrible thing, right? And we find out right at the beginning of that movie, and it's the same with every movie, within 5 minutes, the hero of the story, so Liam Neeson, I can't think what the guy's name is now, but in that movie, his daughter is kidnapped. And that's what captures our attention now. Is he going to rescue his daughter? I want you to think about that. I want you to think about Liam Neeson and Taken when you open your sales presentation. That's why you want to begin with the problem. Don't open up with long lists of thank yous. You want to make sure you get straight to the point. Save all the fluff till later, even the recaps, depending on what's happened building up to that sales pitch. You want to, as quickly as possible, get straight into, here's the problem. Get to that point. Don't give them a reason to zone out. And you want them going, yes. And it should be a felt frustration, like an internal frustration, not just the external problem. So, I mean, the analogy I usually give when it comes to the felt problem would be, if I want a gardener, not that I'm going to get a sales pitch from a gardener, although it tends to happen regularly around here, I get a new visitor, but that gardener, I'm not paying him because I need someone to do my garden. I'm paying him because I'm embarrassed about how my garden looks. And when people come round, I'm embarrassed that it just looks a mess. What I'm paying for is to remove the embarrassment, the internal, I don't want to bring people around for a barbecue or a braai. So that's what you're really doing when you open up your presentation. Speak to what is there, as it relates to the solution you're about to present. What is it that's causing them to be frustrated? That's what you need to start with, okay? Welcome, Dominic. So I was going to send everyone up into a breakout room because we had about 20 people, but there's not that many of you. So we'll just do this together. We've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So the whole point here is to start thinking about it. And what I really want you guys to do, and please do jump in, is think about what problems or frustrations are you resolving for your customers? Or, and to your point earlier, Julie, you were talking about how you're making their lives better. Same principle. They are somewhere, and you might be able to take them somewhere else, somewhere better in terms of from where they are now. So I'm keen to hear from you guys. What problems or frustrations do you think you're resolving for your customers? Anyone want to volunteer to contribute?
Generally, I deal with construction claims and disputes. So we're either trying to mitigate a client's losses, i.e. they would have lost $500 million on a massive project, and losing 300 million is the best case scenario for them. And if that costs them 10, 20 million dirhams in fees for us, that's a win. Or we're actually trying to put forward a claim on behalf of a client to recover money from another party.
So if they were to lose that money, they don't hire you, so let's say they don't hire you, they do end up losing more. What's at stake for them? What's the internal emotion that's going to be created by the person who's accountable for that?
It varies here, but generally, I mean, the issue here can often be with the large family trading groups, that the issue is not external losses, but how they divvy up the allocation of losses within the trading group.
Right.
So it could be from the retail to the real estate division of a large family group, and it will affect one general manager's team and their bonuses compared to another group within the firm.
So frustration with the loss of money, loss of face, perhaps loss of reputation. So it's things like loss of faith, loss of reputation, those kind of more emotive things that you need to try and bring into a presentation. That's where it's the felt pain, where people tend to, and when you can connect yourself as a resolution to that, that's far more powerful than even beyond just the money, because that's when you put the two together.
Quite often our biggest problem is actually where the client project team have been putting forward that the problem and the reason they've lost money is all the other side. It's contractor saying it's all the employer side, and they've been telling head office that for the last 2 years. And when we get involved, which is usually after they've tried to solve the problem themselves, or they've got in some cheaper consultants, and then we go in there and say, right, well, we're actually going to at the Rolls-Royce end of the market, and it's going to cost you more to get less than these guys were telling you were going to get. But what they were telling you were going to get is just, you must have been on drugs if you believed it. It's actually managing their expectations.
Okay. What about yourself, Julian, your business? What kind of frustrations are you resolving for your customers?
So, sorry, Julia or Yulia?
I said Julian, sorry, but Yulia, you can maybe go next.
Yeah, please. You go ahead, please.
Sorry, Julian. So in our case, right now, especially most of the cases, there are a lot of the problems that businesses were not ready to sell online. So first of all, we help them to get online. This is the very big frustration from them, to open up a new channel for their sales. Another frustration that they have is that...
Sorry, Yulia, let me stop you there. Okay, so I need to open up a new channel for my sales. That's an external problem. And there are actually 3 levels of problem that people face. If that's the external problem, what's the internal emotion that's manifested as a result? So I haven't opened up a channel, an online channel for selling. That's perhaps causing me to lose money or lose market share. Again, that's the fact. What's the internal emotion that's caused for, let's say it's a business owner, someone owns a business. How does that make them feel?
I think feeling, of course, frustration, because this is the only channel that they can sell right now through, for example.
Okay.
when there was a lockdown, the stores is closed and they are not able to operate, or they can the only way they can do their sales and to drive the business, continue the business, is to sell online.
Okay, so they're perhaps unsure about how to do that, and they need external advice, or actually an external consultant like yourself. And
Yeah,
that's causing, maybe they might fear losing their business entirely. Like, you don't want to go too far with the fear component, but it's try and think about the end result of that. It's what emotion does that manifest? Because human beings, in essence, we're emotional creatures and we make emotional decisions. I'm buying someone to fix the website, yes, or I'm buying someone to take my business online, yes, but I'm doing that so that I can avoid something that's going to slow me down or stop my growth or whatever it might be, and that's causing me to feel worried. It's causing me to feel something, and that's the thing you want to speak to. What about yourself, Julian?
Yeah. So let me start off with kind of introducing what the business does. So I have a technology business here. We use 3D printing technology to produce personalized medical products for customers in dental businesses, in hospitals, things like this. So what I've tried to kind of synthesize that, because we have quite different products and we have quite different customers as well. So our main objective is to solve complex medical problems by providing simple technology solutions, so our customers can become leaders in their fields, in their own respective fields. So the problem I'm trying to solve is these complex medical problems which they're faced with, which could be like we did a kidney transplant recently, could be a dental implant. We did a jaw replacement jaw. So these are all very, very different complex medical problems.
I understand correctly. So you would then 3D print a replacement item that's going to help them within that surgery, for example.
Yeah, so we'd be providing like a digital planning service, and then we'd provide a cutting guide or some kind of supporting instrumentation, and then potentially an implant as well.
Right.
But we have other types of products as well, some of which are just anatomical models which are used for reference. So
what's the alternative to working with someone like yourself, Julian? Sorry, I'm just trying to get to grips with the idea myself.
I can give you an example of that. So we're dealing with a maxillofacial surgeon at the moment,
right.
And if we don't support him by providing an anatomical model and cutting guides, he's got a patient. It's a 1-year-old child whose head is not developing in the right proportions. So he'll have to go into the surgery. He'll have to estimate where to saw the head of this young child, and then in the surgery he'll have to try and make a symmetrical skull. So the problem we solve there is that we can do all of that using technology ahead of the surgery. Yeah, so he'll save hours, he'll get a better result, he'll get a more predictable result as well.
Got it. So in essence, the problem you're solving is you're removing the risk that he faces when he goes into surgery of not getting the result that he wants to get.
So on a micro level, we're saving him time, and then we're saving him, we're enabling him to get a better result, and we're enabling him to get more control of the result as well.
Okay. Thanks, Julian. I appreciate that. I'd love to actually understand it more. It's fascinating what you do. Dominic, do you want to jump in just as we talk about the kind of problems or frustrations your business resolves?
Sorry, yeah, I've been jumping in and out of calls.
Don't worry.
We're actually in the 3D printing field as well. Julian and I quite well. But we specialise in the architectural world. So we create architectural models, whether it's sales models or design models and process models, mostly for developers and architects.
Right.
And the alternative to using us is using kind of a traditional model maker, if you like, who rely very heavily on labour and handmade goods, whereas we can make the models a little bit more accurate and also produce the models quicker and a lot of the time a bit cheaper than a traditional model maker as well, who relies on.
So the problem you're solving is what? The ability to produce these things faster, and so speed and accuracy.
Yeah, and in I'm sure everyone knows in Dubai, speed is normally the big thing, you know. So we want this next week, and it needs to be installed in whatever Dubai Mall.
So the internal piece might be something about under pressure to get something quality and in a short time frame, something to that effect. I'm thinking about so the external problem is I need something quickly, I need it to be accurate. The internal frustration is, all right, I'm under pressure. That's if you're under pressure to get something along those lines, perhaps. Would that be how your customers are feeling?
Yeah, that's kind of the sentiment that we often have from our customers, a bit of panic, a bit of
You have a call now?
fluster.
Okay. All right, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Dominic. Brad, do you want to quickly share?
Yeah, well, so my company has, basically we're a distributor. I distribute liquid glass nanotechnology for car protection. We're moving into household items in hospitals. So basically the liquid glass is a coating that goes onto walls and floors, and it prevents bacteria and dirt sticking to these surfaces. And in hospitals right now, it's very, very important because cleaning takes time, disinfecting takes time. There's you know, the product that we distribute, we work in Canada, South Africa, the UK, and the whole of Central and Eastern Europe. So it's very varied markets. Everybody's got very different requirements.
So what's the problem you're resolving then? Are you in essence saving people?
We're saving time, we're saving effort, and we're saving frustration. To give an example, I mean, can you imagine a Saturday night in an emergency room in a really dodgy part of the UK? You know, there's dirt, there's blood, there's every room has to be cleaned between each patient, or as much as possible. And if we can, with our product, it can reduce up to 25% the time required to clean those rooms. Plus, the antibacterial technology included in the product means that there is less chance of further infections in hospitals and in ambulances and places, you know, for patients that come in with one thing and leave with something else.
So what's at stake for that in person, and what's the internal frustration cause? If I'm running an emergency ward and I'm not able to do those things, am I under pressure? Is that where it's
pressure? I mean, your turnaround time drops. So if you can get through 200 patients a night, or you can get through 250 patients a night, which would you rather be doing? And that's on one side of it. I mean, we have a product, you know, the same technology that people can put on their cars to protect the coating. You know, I know we've spoken about that in the past.
So that's about embarrassment, right? That's rather than having a dirty car, I've got a clean car. The internal emotion is
frustration of sitting at car washes. You know, wasting your Saturday afternoon cleaning your car. You know, we've got a product that can go onto the furniture in your house. We have a product that you can put onto your mobile phone, which is probably one of the dirtiest things that anybody touches without even realizing it. You know, and so, but it's all, in essence, it's about saving time, it's about saving frustration, and it's about creating a healthier environment for you to be in.
So I'm going to move on, guys, and I appreciate it. I wanted to give everybody a chance because it's a relatively small group of people. But the point is figuring out what's the problem these people are facing, and then also considering the internal emotion that creates, because people are more likely to move and take action when you can speak to that internal emotion. And so if we go back to our sales presentation, you want to start with that problem speak to them about that problem on an emotional level. What's the internal frustration it's causing? And not only that, you want to ramp that up. So you want to ramp up the stakes by agitating that frustration. Again, we tend to, as salespeople, they tend to try to jump too early into the solution without spending enough time getting these issues to bubble up to the surface. And sometimes when you're pitching, you don't necessarily know, and I appreciate this when I've worked with customers to build sales keynotes, you don't always know exactly what their frustrations are. But if you're an expert in your industry and your business is solving a particular problem, with some effort in advance, you can think about the things that are causing frustration for them, that might be causing frustration. You can ask questions. You can figure out which stakeholders are in the room that you're going to be speaking to, and they might have different issues. So you might speak to, a CFO might have one issue, a COO might have another, a head of sales might have another. But trying to think about what those issues are, and spending time, a third of your presentation, talking about the problems and really building tension. Because what you're going to do is you're going to offer resolution to that tension, and that's the hook. So I would encourage you to try and think about doing that. And the questions are a good way to do it, or talking about examples of where things might have gone wrong with other instances, not them perhaps, but where you can, within the industry or with something that's relevant, but speaking to those problems. So that's number 2. All right, back to the movies. Anybody recognize this scene from a movie? That's a question, not a rhetorical question. What's going on here?
Right. Star Wars, right?
He's about to blow up the Death Star.
Star Wars. So if you haven't seen Star Wars, this is Luke Skywalker. He's the hero of the story, and the guide in the story in that movie is either Obi-Wan Kenobi or Yoda. And this is the point where he gets a vision of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he says, "Luke, in order to blow up the Death Star and beat the bad guys, you need to shoot the torpedo down into the Death Star, and that's how you're going to do it. And to do that, you're going to use the Force." He's giving him advice. He's giving him a plan. He's giving him a way out of this terrible situation he finds himself in. So it's at this point, once you've agitated their frustration, you need to introduce a way out. And that's really what this is about. It's you being the guide to them as the hero, and you're going to help them win the day. So by introducing a way out in your presentation, at this point, you start to introduce what it is that you do. What's your solution? Share your solution, and as it relates to the frustrations you've been talking about. Talk about your business, your products. This is the point where you do that, but making sure you're connecting it back to those frustrations. I talked about the internal frustration before. The third level, this is where movies become really powerful. It's philosophical. So it's just not right that the bad guys should win. The bad guys shouldn't win. It's just not right that somebody that doesn't get to spend the rest of their lives with the person they've fallen in love with. It's kind of like, it's characterized by words like, it ought not to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't have to suffer with this problem. You shouldn't have to worry about getting your payout, whatever it might be. So that's the philosophical problem. At some philosophical level, it's just not right that your customer faces this internal frustration. So try and speak to them about that and position your solution as a way out to that. You then want to go one step further than that. So for those who were on the session I did about websites yesterday, in just the same way that on a website you'll see step 1, step 2, step 3, giving people a plan where what you do might be complex. We want to give people a plan in our presentation. So we've introduced our solution that may be complex. You now want to break it down into simple, easy to understand steps. So now in their minds, what you've done is you've talked about their problems, you've agitated that, you've positioned yourself as the person who can resolve that problem. And at this point, they might be thinking, yeah, okay, these guys or girls can help me. They can help me resolve my problem. But they're now going to put themselves at risk. So if you're presenting, you're going to give them a proposal, it's going to cost them money. If they go with you, they are at risk. They're at risk of losing face, of losing money, of losing time. So we need to simplify what's going to happen next. So you want to talk about how you operate. What's going to happen next? What's the process you follow? And that can be at different stages of what you do, right? You can start off with what happens after this meeting. You could start off with, here's how we work. We do this, then we do this, and we do this. even if how you work is massively complex. So some businesses, the implementation of a solution can be complex. You need to try and break it down into manageable steps that they can visualize in their mind. I'm going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And at each step, we're going to do this so that we give this to you, that we resolve this point, your concern about this step of the process. Then we're going to do this, and that ensures that we don't face this issue. And then we do this so that you can enjoy success in the future. Really breaking it down, and you can start to address some of the objections that they might have using a plan by showing that you mitigate those kind of risks that might exist in your plan. So that's the fourth part of your presentation. You're now starting to reel them into, you can resolve their problem. Next step, back to the movies. It's probably my favorite movie of all time. Anyone recognize this one?
Shawshank, yeah.
The Shawshank Redemption, right. So the guy on the right is Red, the guy on the left is Andy. Andy gets locked up for a crime he didn't commit. He's going to spend 25 years in jail, and when he's in there, he meets Red. And basically, Red is the guide in this movie, and Andy is the hero. He's a character, and we're really wondering if he's going to find justice. And he faces a tough time when he goes into jail, but actually, Red's been there and done it. Red has been in jail for a lot longer. He knows how it works. He knows how the system works. He can get you anything you want, and he takes Andy under his wing. He acts as a guide to Andy in this movie. So this is where they position this second character who helps the hero of the story overcome their journey. And the same, so I want you to think about those guys, and the same is true for yourselves. So now is the point. Only now do you start to talk about introducing authority for you as a business. So you've given them a plan, you've told them how you're going to resolve their problem. Then you want to tell them why you've got the right to win this piece of business, or to win this project, or to sell whatever it is you're selling. So introducing authority is then the point where you talk about case studies, testimonials, stories of transformation where you've helped other customers, awards, all those kind of things, quality standards that might exist. What tends to happen, and the number of sales pitches I've sat in where I walk in, I sit down, and someone's pitching to me for whatever it might be, and this is where they start. Hey, I'm going to tell you about our business. We've been in business for 20 years, and we won this award, and we've done this, and we've helped. And actually what they're doing is they're starting with a story about themselves. They're positioning themselves as the hero of the story. Whereas I'm sat in that room with them pitching to me because I need something. I need to fix a problem. I need to move ahead somehow. So when you start here, and this is such a common problem, when you start here, you've not pulled them into a story that's about them. And so this is the point where you introduce all of that great stuff that you might have done as a business in the past. The next piece is then to visualize success. So when they work with you, yes, you're going to solve this problem, but, and Julian, we were kind of talking about this right at the start of this session, you want to talk about where you're going to take them to. So what kind of success can you help them achieve? And you really need to visualize that as vividly as possible. What's their life going to look like? Where are you going to take them? And you really need to call them to step into that, because if they follow your plan and you call them to action and they go with you, this is what life could look like after the fact. You know, a website, an e-commerce website that drives more sales to your business and ensures that you've got this omni-channel approach to the market. Or, you know, we're going to work with you, we're going to resolve this, you're going to get a bigger payout, Andrew, than you could have done. So it's about really being as visceral with that imagery as possible. You know, if you can literally use images or videos here, it's a great way to visualize that. When we were talking about websites yesterday, that's where visualizing success can literally be done through a video or a photograph, helping people to see what life is going to look like, because you're inviting them to step into that predicted future by visualizing that. Any questions so far, guys? All right. Okay. So again, questions for you guys at this point. Who joined us there? No, somebody joined us but left. All right. So those who are still here, what does success look like for your customers? So for you, perhaps, Andrew, what does that look like? How would you visualize that?
Two ends of the spectrum. One is we save them money that they would have otherwise expended or lost, and in the long term, ultimately, if we do training and work with them on a couple of projects, they never need us again. As in, our whole business is really avoiding disputes.
So they would never find themselves in that situation again. Okay, yeah, that's nice. Okay, awesome. What about yourself, Julia? What are you doing to position what success looks like for your customers? How do you visualize that?
Definitely, these are the numbers. Numbers talk about the success, because, for example, if we are talking about e-commerce, especially, only the sales, how the business is going. If the sales are going well, of course, and the customer is coming back to us and has some money and budget the money to put some new features, new enhancements on the platform, this is the success, means the customer succeeded. Another example, like with Barracuda, we did for them the mobile app with loyalty program, and they acquired in 5 or 4 months about 20,000 people into loyalty program, and all the people on the loyalty program mobile app, they generate 51% of revenue rather than the normal store walking customers.
Let me ask you a question, Julia. Okay, you build an e-commerce solution, you drive greater an improvement in my KPIs, so whatever I might measure success based on, whatever those indicators of success are. So, but then why does that matter? What does that mean for me then? If I'm a business owner, why does that matter to me beyond the number? If I can drive that performance, then what?
Oh, what do you mean? I think that everyone needs to generate more sales and
But why? What does my life look like after I've done that? So if I drive more sales for my business, mm-hmm. I agree, we want to drive sales for our business, but what does that mean for me as a business owner?
As a business owner, first of all, you keep your business.
All right, so that's what you're helping me avoid losing my business. But what's the positive side of that?
The positive side of
what might it be?
I didn't get your question, to be honest.
All right, so where I'm going with that is, okay, you drive those numbers, I sell more as a business, and as a result of that, I can buy the house I've always dreamed of, or I can expand my business into new territories, because I've always dreamed of having a bigger business, depending on what you might find out from them. So, I'm spitballing off the top of my head because I don't know your customers specifically, but you want it with success. You want to visualize something beyond just the number. Try and visualize beyond that. I would recommend, where you can paint a picture of what life might look like if I were to achieve those things, so that you can rest assured that your business is going to continue to grow into the future, and you'll have a business that will support you into retirement or something like that. If you've really understood who you're presenting to and pitching to, you can get far more visceral and future focused with how you position your solution to them.
It depends on from customer to customer, and it depends on customers' targets. So I can give you hundreds of examples, because each customer is very individual, right? So, and each customer is starting sales from different levels. So if I am like a new business, I'm starting from 0. If I reach number 5, it's already a success. But if I am already at 100 at the top, and I want to, there are different, and not all the businesses want to expand, for example. Some businesses want just to keep the sales, but if the trend is going to e-commerce and offline sales from the market is going down, so in order to keep the same level of the business is also another one. So it really depends on the customer.
Yeah, it does, and that's about personalization. So you're absolutely right. Okay, I'm gonna crack on rather than go through everything. So when you get to we're at the end of your sales pitch, right? So you're pitching what you want to end with. So typically what people will tend to remember is they'll remember the beginning and they'll remember the end. And hopefully they remember the stuff in between, but if they only remember the beginning and the end, you want to make sure that you restate the problem so that you're connecting what you do and how you resolve that problem as a resolution to that problem. So you want to leave them needing that. You want them to, the last thing that you say to be about a reminder, you know, this is what's at stake, this is what the problem is. And then that's your kind of, you drop the mic moment and you stop talking, particularly in a sales pitch. Salespeople or business owners tend to keep going unless they've got absolute agreement and, you know, positive kind of feedback from an audience. When I've watched people present, they will tend to keep talking, but it's having a clear plan in advance. You're going to close out with, so yeah, and here's the issue. So you started with it, ended with it, and then you hand over to them, and that's when you hand over to them for questions. So that is how I would use a narrative, story-based approach to building a sales pitch to get the most impact. So, talking of questions, any questions, guys?
No questions. I like the point number 5 about introducing authority at the end. I'm not sure I've been guilty of that, but yeah, I recognise that being an issue.
Yeah, the authority matters, but it's about authority in relation to the problems and the issues you resolve or what you do. And so that's why it's always recommended you do them in that order.
I've got a question. It's a bit general though.
Go for it, Dominic.
We offer quite a few different product ranges, and often, for example, if I'm delivering a pitch at a trade show or something, and it's not a direct customer pitch. Obviously, if I know the customer, I'm going to know their needs there and thereabouts, and I can kind of work on them. But a lot of the time, we have quite a wide range of customers, so we need to cast the net quite wide. We might have someone who works in, for example, one of our big customers works in oil and gas, but then we work with a lot of developers. So we have to often cast the net quite wide. And at times I can feel like after I've given a presentation, I'll go off and think, I've cast that so wide that no one knew if that was for them specifically, which is something that we struggle with.
So this is a common problem. So I'll give you an example. So recently worked with a construction consultancy, basically. So they have a whole number of, in fact, I think it was 12 different divisions. And then you had kind of all these business heads, and they were saying, you know, our sales pitch is so big. I think it was 60 pages of, you know, there's these kind of sales presentations they would give, and even their sales keynote, which is what you kind of described there, where you're giving a keynote to a larger audience, and you might have multiple different customers from multiple different industries. So the process we went through from there with them was trying to break it up into almost a manageable number of problems or solutions, even, so you can come at it either way, and breaking it down into ideally not more than 3 or 4, but trying to think about the biggest, where, depending on the trade show you're at, who's the most likely audience, who's the biggest revenue generators, and then thinking, oh, right, okay, right, well, if there's 3 or 4 of those, so going through the same process we just went through, but you're almost speaking to each one within that session. It's the same as actually in a sales pitch. If you've got 8 different stakeholders who have probably got different points of interest as to what you're going to do for that business, it's the same principle. It's trying to think, right, well, who are they, and then staying focused on that and not being distracted from that. So if it's oil and gas and it's construction, and it's, use those as your examples. So where you might use some kind of analogy or some kind of an example as you're giving an example. If you're going through that the process we just went through, use an example, but then use 3 different examples, one for each of those key industries, and hedge your bets on less rather than more would be my advice. Because it's easy to get sucked into, okay, well, I'm going to try and just capture everyone. But if I think, right, well, if I can just capture 60% of this audience and it resonates with 60%, even less, 50%, at least it's 50% rather than everybody kind of thinking, I'm not entirely sure what that was all about.
Yeah.
That's how I would do it.
Appreciate it. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, any other questions, guys? Nope.
I would just add to that, Matt, that quite often by narrowing it down a little bit, so covering 60%, it will actually get the client thinking, and it might actually prompt them to actually ask you, the provider, questions and ask you to expand on your service offering. And by doing that, then they're directing you down the path so you know where to go.
If you can build curiosity in your sales pitch, and you're inviting someone, or if you can leave things almost unsaid, so you can hint to the fact that you can resolve something, but you don't give everything away. In a sales keynote of that nature, where you've got a large audience, what you're doing actually is you can open a story loop in someone's mind. So a story loop is, end of Netflix, at the end of the Netflix series, something happens, and to find out what happens, you've got to watch the next episode, right? That's how they get you to binge watch Netflix. It's the same, at the beginning of a movie, they open a story loop because the characters, Liam Neeson's daughter gets kidnapped, and then to close that story loop, you've got to watch the rest of the movie. You can do the same thing in a presentation, encouraging people to ask questions. So where you've got these different industries, Dominic, you might be able to speak to them, but not necessarily give everything away and leave them thinking. It's like dropping a hint to someone to ask a question in the audience. You're almost trying to get them to want to know the answer to something. It's hard to give you the specifics on that without talking about a specific business, but you can do it. You can drop these hints into a presentation that prompt people to think, I want to know how that works, or I want to know how I'm going to resolve that. Or you might say, okay, at the end of this session, I'm going to give you something of value, but I'll come back to that later. What you've done is you've caused someone to go, oh, well, I better hang around, I better keep listening to find that thing out. I'm talking quite theoretically here, but I'm trying to just give you a sense of how you might pull, when you've got multiple audiences, there's different techniques you can use to keep them on the edge of their seat or keep them curious.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know what I mean? This is the one the tool I tend to share with people because it's so simple. For salespeople, for anyone pitching or presenting, there's 3 stages of a relationship, and this, I consider this to be the law of all relationships. Doesn't matter what kind of relationship. They start off with curiosity, and then enlightenment, and then commitment. Curiosity about what you do and if you can solve my problem. Enlightenment about how you're going to do it, and only then do you get commitment. And you can't jump those 3. You can't move straight to commitment. And it might, if I go shopping and I need to find something to the hardware store to get a hammer, that happens instantaneously. Or if I'm on Amazon shopping, it's okay, I'm curious about this and I'm enlightened and I commit. It might happen very quickly. In a complex sales presentation, it might take time, but if you can take people through those 3 stages of a relationship, you're more likely to get commitment. The story for another day. Any other questions before we close out? Okay, I will post. Okay, awesome. I'll post just about this on LinkedIn afterwards. And what I tend to do is, if you tag somebody you think might value a copy of this book. This Building a Story Brand, by the way, is the book where Donald Miller essentially talks about the Story Brand framework, which is the framework that I use and I'm certified to use. It's actually all in the book. You can self-implement this stuff and self-learn this stuff. But I will post about that. And if you think somebody else might find it valuable, please tag them. That helps me get exposure. Obviously, kind of invest my time in these things. So I really appreciate you even if you just comment back. And that's just a quick tip, by the way. If you're posting on LinkedIn, if you want your post to get more exposure, rather than getting someone to share it or asking them to share it, get them to start a conversation in the comments. Conversations in the comments get you more, or mean more people see whatever it is you're posting about. So I will share that afterwards and give away copies of the book to whoever you might tag. Not everybody, but I will give copies of the book away. And then one last thing, I've just launched a new part of my business, which is this virtual and 3D virtual workplace and event space. It's representing a company called Verbella across the Middle East. It's a communication and collaboration platform. I'm going to be running a virtual networking event on the 20th of May, so I'll let you guys, since you were on this session, I'll let you guys know about it. But if you're interested in learning more about that, please drop me a line. And that's pretty much it. 5 minutes early.
Thanks very much, man.
If you've got any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I will close things out and see you guys around.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks, Julia.
Again, interesting.
Cheers, guys.